कुदरत की खूबसूरत छटा के बीच स्थित है ये इंग्लैंड की बेहद खास इमारत। जगह है सोलसबरी का अरुंडेल इलाका। अरुंडेल नदी के करीब इस इमारत में कभी ब्रिटेन के पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री एडवर्ड हीथ रहा करते थे। एडवर्ड हीथ 1970 से 1974 तक 4 साल ब्रिटेन के प्रधानमंत्री थे। हालांकि इस दौरान वो पीएम के सरकारी निवास 10 डाउनिंग स्ट्रीट में रहे, लेकिन अरुंडेल के इस घर में पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री एडवर्ड हीथ की विरासत से जुड़ी कई यादें संजो कर रखी गई हैं। पियानो पर रखी दुनिया की बड़ी राजनीतिक हस्तियों की तस्वीरों में भारत की पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री इंदिरा गांधी की भी तस्वीर है। यूरोपियन यूनियन में शामिल होने या ना होने पर ब्रिटेन में बहस छिड़ी है। हम आपको बता दें कि एडवर्ड हीथ ने ही बतौर प्रधानमंत्री यूरोपियन यूनियन में शामिल होने की सबसे पहले पहल की थी। एडवर्ड हीथ के इस ऐतिहासिक घर के क्यूरेटर और मैनेजर हैं स्टुअर्ट क्रावेन। हमारी संवाददाता लवीना टंडन ने यहाँ उनसे खास बातचीत की।
I'm here with Stuart Craven, who is the manager and curator of the house of Edward Heath, former Prime Minister of UK. This was a man who tried very hard to get UK into the European Union, make European Union and Europe one. And this is a very interesting time at this point in time in the UK, when UK is going to have a referendum whether to decide to remain in the European Union or not. So they are having doubts about staying in the European Union. Very interesting time to be here in Arundel. Thank you very much, Stuart, for letting us in and showing the house.
It's a pleasure, and I hope you've learnt a little bit about him when you've been here.
Yes, absolutely, very inspiring indeed. In fact, I shouldn't call it the house, or the home, which is absolutely home.
It is. In fact, it is retained as a home as he lived here. He stayed here between 1985 until he died in 2005. So it remains just as it was when he lived here.
Yes, and interestingly, this is the only house of any Prime Minister in the UK, if I'm right, which is retained the way he left it.
I believe so, but there are other 2 properties which are National Trust, so they're slightly changed, but this is exactly as he left it. It's more recent history, if you like.
Yes, and at this point in time, what Edward Heath stood for is quite interesting. It's very significant. Why did he try to make UK a part of European Union and Europe as one?
I believe it was his war record. He served very well during the Second World War, and he had experiences of going through Germany and the Spanish Civil War as well. And eventually he was called up and served with great credit during the last World War in the Royal Artillery. And that taught him really that we must have a united Europe for peaceful purposes. I strongly believe that that is the case that made him decide that he wanted to continue to get us into entry in Europe.
Okay. What were his efforts at that point in time, and how successful and instrumental were they to make UK a part of Europe?
Of course, he became an MP in 1950, and I think that was one of his driving forces. And Winston Churchill being one of his heroes, and of course he'd served under Winston Churchill as well, he decided that that's what he wanted to do. And in 1963, he actually won the Charlemagne Prize for services to Europe, so that really gave them the incentive to become Prime Minister eventually and do exactly what he wanted to do.
Okay. Today, when we see UK divided in whether to be in the UK or Europe or not, how do you feel his values or the principles that he stood for stand now?
I think he would be very disappointed. I think he wanted a united Europe and a united Great Britain as well. I think he'd be extremely disappointed with the modern way of splitting up and going their own way. I think he would want to retain the European connection at all times.
Yeah. Do you not think that UK has evolved and changed, and the circumstances have changed, and therefore being in Europe is not feasible or not advisable?
I think we're sort of going away from the ideal of united Europe for peaceful purposes, and I think that's what he wanted to, and that's what he achieved. So what's become subsequently, yes, it has changed, possibly for the wrong reasons, but he would not like the way it's been progressed.
Okay, the Edward Heath Trust, charitable trust, is the owner, and we look after all this. Now, are they in any way trying, and in what way are they trying to influence this entire opinion, if at all?
Well, we are trying to open up the house to show what you've seen today, of his services to Europe and also the house itself. And the Trust are endeavouring to try and push that message forward of a peaceful Europe and what he's achieved throughout his time. It's in early stages, I guess, of just opening, because we've only just opened again after a couple of uncertain years. But the charitable foundation are working hard to try and enable this to happen in the future and continue opening, so that people can be educated into learning about what he has achieved.
And what he stood for, and especially in this time when Europe is going through such a tough time.
It certainly is going through a tough time, and I can understand some of the reasons, but certainly his ideals were correct in the first place.
Okay. Now, it was also quite interesting to see the house of a Prime Minister, the way it was retained. And there was an interesting picture of Indira Gandhi on his piano. So what was that with that connection, and how did it play out in historical terms?
I think it was a connections with lots of people regarding prime ministers and presidents at the same time. Indira Gandhi happened to be the prime minister of the time he was in. And so he had associations with all these people, and of course India being a very close ally of Great Britain throughout the generations. So that you'll see pictures of other people, and they're not necessarily as close, but people that he had dealings with throughout his time as an international statesman.
Yeah, as we went along in the study, we saw the Bangladesh war memorial honor that was given. So what sort of role did he play in that period?
It's a little bit unclear, but certainly it was only in the last couple of years that they approached us and they wanted us to go and receive a posthumous medal for his services to enable Bangladeshi independence. So I guess at that time he helped them through diplomatic sources and so on as being Prime Minister in '71.
Yeah, okay. Now tell us about how, when does this house open for people, and what all are they able to see?
Well, the house is open traditionally through the summer months, so it would be in March, end of March to the end of October. And we open it for guided tours for the general public. It's been an extremely popular attraction so far. We'd like to get a lot more people to realise that the uncertainty is over and we are finally open for a long time now. It has to show the Prime Minister as he lived in at the time, with various interests. We had a very strong sailing connection, a very strong musical connection which we illustrate, and a very interesting and eclectic art collection which people would be fascinated to see as well. So the general public enjoy not only seeing this beautiful house, and this is what we're trying to achieve, to try and get funding for our future, because it's not a national trust property like the other ones I mentioned, the Churchill and Disraeli. Then we have to be self-financing in some way. And of course Sir Edward didn't actually leave us any money. He left the house and the contents, which are valuable enough. But the house is an old house, 750 years old, some parts of it, and it needs a lot of maintenance. So we're looking forward to getting funding in some ways to keep us going for a long time.
Okay. Now, what if it had become the National Trust, and why is it still in the charitable hands? Is that something?
Yeah, it's interesting that the National Trust were approached by the original trustees, but they would like a large endowment with the house. I think it was in the region of 8 million at the time, which of course we haven't got that money in the first place. So it would be a nice decision to go to the National Trust, but we haven't got any option because we haven't got that money.
So what would be an ideal situation? What would you like to happen for this to be
I think it's
sustained?
developing in just the right ways already, because we've got potential funding to keep us going. Not only the visitor numbers are starting to pick up again, but we're opening it for other events. For example, seminars and discussions maybe on Europe and his international history, musical concerts which he would love as well, and opening it up for all sorts of different corporate events too. So we have to take that slowly, but eventually I think it will remain a permanent attraction, and it would educate children into learning that from a humble background they can achieve quite something.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Stuart. That was
Pleasure.
Stuart telling us about this gorgeous and very inspiring house of former Prime Minister Edward Heath, who was a sailor, musician, and of course a politician. And this house needs upkeep. This is history alive here, and this is amazing job by Stuart and the team to keep this so. Lavina Tandon for Headlines Today from Arundel.